out of the NFL where the Chargers plan to hire Mike McDaniel as their next offensive coordinator. That's been confirmed by our Jonathan Jones. McDaniel, who was fired by the Dolphins after 4 seasons as head coach, withdrew from consideration for the Browns coaching search earlier on Wednesday. He'll replace Greg Roman, who was let go after Herbert and the Chargers offense struggled mightily in that wild card loss to the Patriots. We're now bringing the man himself, CBS Sports lead NFL insider Jonathan Jones, for more. And Mike McDaniel, with no shortage of headlines in the coaching carousel this week, the latest surrounding the potential union with Jim Harbaugh out in L.A. But, JJ, I want to get your latest on what you're hearing.
Yeah, very unique pairing there between those two, right? Two eccentrics, if you will. Mike McDaniel getting with Jim Harbaugh to help out with Justin Herbert. And obviously Justin Herbert's had a handful of offensive coordinators in his young career, Shane Steichen and Joe Lombardi and Greg Roman. And now he gets Mike McDaniel, someone who is going to bring in so much more pre-snap motion, someone who is going to institute so much more creative run schemes, right, for an offensive line, that it's going to be interesting to see how they match the personnel with what Mike McDaniel is hoping to do there at offensive coordinator. It'll be interesting to see if they can get a little more speed on the offensive side of the ball, because of course we know that that's what made that Miami Dolphins offense so successful under Mike McDaniel. But McDaniel making the sort of interesting move, pulling himself out of consideration for the Cleveland Browns head coaching job, and making a very quick determination that he wanted to be in Los Angeles with Justin Herbert, at least in 2026.
Okay, well, JJ, there still are, as we stand right now, there's 6 vacancies still out there. But what was the idea maybe behind opting for an OC position rather than maybe following up with his tenure in Miami with another head coaching opportunity? Because if we're being honest, one of the hottest offensive minds in the NFL, and he was a hot candidate on the head coaching trail.
Yeah, it's all about fit, right? It's all about making sure that your next stop is not going to be your last stop after 2 years, that it is going to be successful. And clearly, Mike McDaniel did not like the setup there with the Cleveland Browns, as an example. I would imagine that he didn't like either the quarterback situation, either the front office situation, perhaps the Cleveland Browns' path to the playoffs in the AFC North. Whatever it was, he decided that he would rather be, at best, second in command than being number one. And people always talk about, these jobs, it's just 1 of 32. And so when you get offered it, boy, it's hard to turn it down. And of course, he was not offered the Cleveland Browns job. And we don't know that he necessarily would have been offered that to begin with. I will say that they were serious in Cleveland about Mike McDaniel, but he pulled out of contention in part, I think, to have a reset year, a rehab year, if you will. If he is successful with Justin Herbert and the LA Chargers, then in about 11 and a half months, he'll be able to choose wherever he wants to go. He won't just have to take whatever scraps are offered to him with the 6th, 7th, 8th best head coaching job that's available to him. He may, in fact, be the top candidate in the market this time next year. So that appears to be the thought process for Mike McDaniel in choosing to be the offensive coordinator with what many would consider a top 5 quarterback in the NFL.
You talk about this being maybe a rehab year and opting for the opportunity to be second in command rather than being the head man. But you think about he pulled himself out of contention there with the Browns. He was in the running for that top spot for Baltimore. You're looking at Vegas. And then also, if this is, say, a rehab year for him, also the Bucs OC opportunity. You're looking at the Eagles. How much did playing with or just working over Justin Herbert maybe play into his decision? Does that bring more stability to what LA has been trying to do? Because they have gone through a carousel of their own of OCs over there.
Yeah, it's definitely sort of a bird in the hand, 2 in the bush here, right? He knew that this opportunity with the LA Chargers was right there in front of him. Yes, there were the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but you don't know about Todd Bowles' job security beyond this upcoming year. Yes, there was the Philadelphia Eagles. A, he doesn't know if he's going to get that job, and it may take a little bit longer. B, there's always something with the Philadelphia Eagles, right? And you're going to have Nick Sirianni there, who is an offensive-minded head coach. Maybe they don't necessarily mesh all that well. Maybe the offensive personnel there isn't what Mike McDaniel necessarily wanted. And look, you always want to choose quarterback, right? And it's hard to argue that when you have Eric Bieniemy taking the offensive coordinator job with the Kansas City Chiefs, if you're not in the running for the Buffalo Bills head coaching job, Baltimore, maybe you don't believe that you're going to get that job. And so really, when you start looking at the top quarterbacks who are out there, Justin Herbert is right there. And if you have the opportunity to run your offense with Justin Herbert, you think there's some meat left on that bone there, then I do understand Mike McDaniel ultimately deciding that. One other place he was in consideration for, the Tennessee Titans. Robert Saleh, the new head coach there with the Titans, he was a top candidate to be the offensive coordinator there in Tennessee. Now they are going to be moving to their plan B, which may very well include Brian Daboll. Now, he's going to be in high demand in a lot of places, and Brian Daboll is going to wait to hear if his number is called for the Buffalo Bills at head coach. But that may now be the new next top target there in Tennessee at OC now that Mike McDaniel has pulled out.
Mike McDaniel got to tinker, what you talked about earlier, tinkering with that speed that he had out there in Miami when he was with Tyreek Hill. And now he gets to play a little bit more now, taking his talents from South Beach to now Southern California with the Chargers. Jonathan Jones bringing the latest. We appreciate you as always. Thank you so much, JJ. Well, McDaniel back to the coordinator role. After 4 seasons as the head man in Miami, he compiled a record of 35-33 in the regular season, but 0-2 in the playoffs. The offense did flourish with a healthy Tua Tagovailoa averaging over 26 points per game over his first 2 seasons. McDaniel will hope to breathe some new life into just
others unexpectedly, like Bills former head coach John McDermott, have now hopped on the carousel. It is spinning fast. So John Harbaugh's gone to the Giants, Kevin Stefanski to the Falcons, former Packers DC Jeff Hafley is now the head coach of the Dolphins, and the Titans are finalizing a deal with Robert Saleh. But there are still plenty of teams out there that are searching for that next head coach. For more on that, let's welcome back in Lige Douzable. So you have a list, 5 through 1, of your top coaching candidates. I will tell you guys, Sean McDermott is not number 1, so that's going to be a surprise. Let's start with 5, though. Who have you got? For some people, right?
At number 5, Jesse Minter. This is a guy, Amanda, that's bided his time, right? He was a coach at Baltimore and coached many different positions on the defensive side. Goes to Michigan, wins a national championship, and then he goes with Jim Harbaugh to the LA Chargers, and has been one of the better defensive-minded coaches in all of football. Their defense plays top down. They don't give up explosive plays. And when you look at the names on the defense, there's not a lot of gaudy names on that defense, but every year for the last 2 years, Jesse Minter has this defense playing at an elite level. So Jesse Minter has bided his time. I think he's a guy that should get a chance to be a head coach.
Okay, that's number 5. Let's go to number 4, another coordinator here, and a name that has been floated around as a potential head coach for a number of years now.
Yeah, Brian Flores. This is a guy that was the head coach of the Miami Dolphins a few years ago. Didn't work out there, but when you hear his defensive players talk about him, like there's so much elation, there's so much love for him, and you could tell Brian Flores learned a lot from his time as being a head coach with the Miami Dolphins. There's a maturation process when it comes to him and potentially getting another opportunity. You see it right there, the defensive ranks this season, right? Almost top 10 in every statistical category. And since he's been there, right, the defense has improved vastly. They were awful the year before Brian Flores got there. When you look at what he's done over the last 3 years, they're averaging about only giving up around 19 points per game. So this is a guy who has head coaching experience. His players love him. I think he's learned a lot from when he was a head coach the first time, and he deserves another opportunity.
There's so many times we've seen that happen now. As Logan Ryan put it, they have to go to head coaching rehab for a little bit, and then they get back out. I don't know if that's it, but they do learn a lot of valuable lessons. Okay, number 3, and the team that is the favorite to win the Super Bowl would be very sad to see this guy go.
They would be, and he's most likely probably going to be out of there. Clint Kubiak, legacy head coach, if he were to become one. His father, Gary Kubiak, won a Super Bowl with the Denver Broncos, also was the head coach of the Houston Texans. And this is a guy, when you look at the last 2 places he's been, the New Orleans Saints and the Seahawks, he's really flipped and turned those offenses around. Derek Carr in New Orleans, and then look what he's doing with Sam Darnold. You see it right there, the offensive ranks, top 10 in almost every statistical category. Again, he's so inventive in how he sets things up because he goes bigger personnel, but that's not to run the football. That's to throw the ball down the field. And we saw with JSN, right? He really unlocked this kid. This guy is a top 3 or 4 receiver this year in Clint Kubiak's system. And again, Sam Darnold, people have been waiting for the other shoe to drop. It hasn't dropped. And to your point, Amanda, right now they're the favorites to win the Super Bowl. A lot of it has to do with Clint Kubiak.
I'm curious, when your teams, let's say someone like the Bills and you have a Josh Allen, how much does it depend on their background, whether they come from an offensive background, or a defensive background?
Yeah, so I get this question a lot, and it kind of irks me as a defensive player because to me, you can find a good offensive coordinator. You don't have to be an offensive-minded coach. Now, people will push back and say this, Amanda, well, if you're a good defensive coordinator and your offensive coordinator is good, he's most likely going to get poached for a head coaching job. Well, it's your job to continue to find another offensive coordinator. And then what is your program like? Can you develop guys like quarterback coaches, receiver coaches? Can those guys in turn be offensive coordinators? I think you have to have the right system in place. First and foremost, you need a leader of men. You don't necessarily need a guy that calls the plays on offense to come in and be a head coach. I get everybody's pushback saying, well, if you are a good defensive-minded head coach, your offensive coordinator is probably going to get plucked. But that's where it comes down to your system. Can you develop guys so that when one guy leaves, another guy can step into his stead?
It reminds me of Mike Vrabel a lot, and especially when he was with the Titans, he had to give up play calling, and that ended up being a very good thing for him. And look where he is now, absolutely a leader of men. All right, number 2 on your list, and this is where we find Sean McDermott.
For sure, and still shocked that he is no longer the Bills' head coach. When you look at what he's done, Amanda, since he got there, he has been to the playoffs every year except for one. 8 or 9 years,
is it not?
The Bills have been to the playoffs, and they fired this guy. Let's not forget, before he got there, 17-year playoff drought. And you see it right there, most wins by a head coach in the first 9 seasons. He's second on that list.
It's crazy.
Let you know what type of coach he is. 5 straight AFC East divisional crowns until this year. And they got to the second round of the divisional this year with a team that was beat up. And not a lot of talent on that team. So that shows he's a head coach. He's going to be one of the hot commodities now that he's no longer the Bills coach. I look for teams to probably be aggressive when it comes to him. But from his standpoint, I wonder if he's even processed this yet. Right?
Yeah,
he probably, the last thing on his mind was probably that he was going to get fired if they lost that game. So I know he'll have to process it, but the NFL game moves fast. He's going to have to make a decision really quick if he wants to be a head coach this season.
Do you think there are any teams that have made that decision already on their head coach that are now kind of wishing they hadn't?
You haven't signed your deal yet, right?
Yeah, we're still
what does the fine print say on that contract? Again, he would have been one of the hot commodities, and we've seen 4 positions already filled out of the 10. I guarantee those other 3 or 4 teams probably would have interviewed him for their head coaching job.
Absolutely. Okay, number 1 on your list, according to Lige Douzable, the top coaching candidate that is out there right now. Who is it?
Mike McCarthy. I don't know why people don't give him the respect he's due. This is a Super Bowl winning coach. And when he left Green Bay and came to Dallas, from 2021 to 2023, 36 wins. You know the coach that had more wins than him was Andy Reid. That was the only coach in the NFL during that span. And then we saw in his last year, Dak Prescott gets hurt, a few injuries, and it doesn't go well. Still thought Jerry Jones might sign him back. He decides to take a year off. I know he's been maybe linked to Pittsburgh. He's a guy that's from Pittsburgh. Makes a lot of sense. Could he potentially get Aaron Rodgers to potentially not retire and come out of retirement? Well, he hasn't officially retired, but to play the season for the Pittsburgh Steelers. Mike McCarthy is a great coach. And then even when Kellen Moore left and went to the Philadelphia Eagles, he took over play calling, and they had the number 1 scoring offense in football. Remember, Dak Prescott was number 2 in MVP right behind Lamar Jackson. So this is a guy that has proven he can develop guys and take them to that next level. So I think Mike McCarthy, any team would be giddy to get him as a head coach.
I think when you looked at Dallas, there's, you're under the thumb of Jerry Jones when you're there. And we've even heard Troy Aikman and a couple others say maybe that was the issue for Mike McCarthy in Dallas. When you look at what you just said, a phenomenal coach on paper and the record to prove it. Lige Douzable, we appreciate it. Take a look once again at his